It was 1960 when Frank Morris, a convicted criminal with a mind as sharp as his resolve, arrived at Alcatraz, the most formidable high-security prison in America. Alcatraz prison was built on Annisland in the middle of the sea from where no prisoner had ever managed to escape. But Frank was famous for escaping from prisons, and he had already escaped from several before. That's why Frank Morris was sent to Alcatraz. As soon as he arrived at the prison, Frank was thoroughly searched and then sent to his cell where he was now to serve his life sentence. The next morning, while all the prisoners were having breakfast, Morris met another inmate named Litmus. Litmus had a patrat, which he considered his friend and Evan shared his food with. While Morris was talking to Litmus, he noticed a fat inmate named Wolf making inappropriate gestures at him. However, Morris didn't pay much attention and ignored Wolf. After the meal, Morris was taken to the warden's office where the warden threatened him by saying, "If you value your life, don't even think about escaping this prison because no one can escape Alcatraz. If you try to escape from here, the guards will shoot you to death. But if you somehow manage to escape from prison, you will die a painful death by drowning in the cold ocean water." That evening, while the prisoners were out for a walk, Wolf again approached Morris and started harassing him openly. This time, Morris lost his patience and beat the fat man badly. Since Morris had beaten up the strongest inmate in the prison, the rest of the prisoners also began to fear him. Because Morris was quite intelligent, he was assigned to manage the prison library. During this time, Morris met a man named English, who was serving 2 life sentences for murder. Through conversations, Morris learned that English loved history books, and the two quickly became good friends. A few days later, Morris met a man named Doc, who was an excellent painter and spent his entire day painting to fight off his loneliness. One day, Morris went to meet English and asked him about the prison. English told him that escaping from this prison was impossible because prisoners were counted 12 times a day, and snipers were stationed around the prison 24/7 to shoot down anyone attempting to escape. But even if someone managed to escape, they would end up drowning in the cold waters of the sea. That night, a guard told Morris about a carpenter's job for which he would be paid 15 cents an hour. The next day, while Morris was in the prison compound, Wolf attacked him once again. A fight broke out between Morris and Wolf, and when a guard tried to intervene, Wolf stabbed the guard with a knife. As a result of the fight, both of them were locked up in the solitary confinement. Morris was furious because he was only trying to defend himself. 2 days later, when Morris was released from the solitary cell, Litmus sent Jaime a welcome note through his pet rat. A new prisoner had been placed in the cell next to Morris. His name was Charlie, and he was serving time for a major robbery. One day, while the warden was inspecting the cells, he came across Doc's cell, which was filled with his paintings. One of the paintings was of the warden himself, but he didn't like it at all. So he had all the paintings removed from Doc's room and revoked his painting privileges. This meant that from that day on, Doc would no longer be allowed to paint in prison. The warden's decision broke Doc's heart, as painting was the only thing that kept him alive in the prison. The next day, while all the inmates were in the prison workshop, Morris noticed that Doc seemed very upset. Morris told a guard, "You should keep an eye on Doc. He doesn't look well today." But the guards ignored Morris and told him to mind his own business. During work, Doc picked up an axe and, in protest against the warden, cut off 3 fingers of his own hand. Seeing this, the guards rushed him to the prison hospital while Morris stood silently in a corner watching it all unfold. That night, while Morris was in his cell, his eyes fell on a vent from which a cockroach was crawling out. Seeing that, Morris thought that maybe there was a way out beneath that vent. Just then, English arrived outside Morris's cell distributing books and told him that the warden had banned Doc from painting because he didn't like the portrait Doc had made of him. The next day, when Morris went to the mess hall for lunch, he met 2 brothers named John and Clarence. Morris already knew them as they had all been locked up together in Atlanta prison. They began talking about how escaping from Alcatraz was considered impossible. During this conversation, the idea of escaping from the prison first entered Morris's mind. That night, after the guards had completed their rounds, Morris took a nail clipper hidden inside a Bible, which he had stolen from Warden's desk. Then, he began scratching at the wall around the vent in his cell. He noticed that because the prison walls were old, the plaster was coming off quite easily. The next day, Charlie's wife came to visit him. During their conversation, she told him that his mother was seriously ill and, according to the doctors, had only a few months left to live. Hearing this broke Charlie's heart, and he too began to desire an escape from Alcatraz so he could see his mother one last time. That night, when he returned to his cell, he said to Morris, "If you're planning to escape from this prison, I want in." The next morning, while the group was having breakfast, Morris shared his escape plan with his friends. He explained that due to the moisture from the Pacific Ocean, the prison walls had weakened and they could use this to their advantage. They would remove the ventilation grills in their cells and escape through the pipelines running behind them. The escape plan seemed sordid, but the main problem was how to cross the Pacific Ocean and reach the mainland. Morris turned to Clarence and said, "Since you work in the prison's laundry department, whenever you get a chance, steal some raincoats and bring them back to your cell. On the night we escape, we'll use those raincoats to build a raft." Everyone liked Morris's plan, and they all decided to help him. That night, Morris got back to work and started scraping the cement off the wall again. Meanwhile, Charlie sat in his cell, keeping an eye on the guard so he could alert Morris if anyone came near. Morris was digging into the wall with all his strength, but the worn-out nail clipper was making the job very difficult, and in the process, his hands got badly injured. The next morning, Morris told his friends about his problem and said, "If I could just get a small tool, it would be much easier to dig through that wall." As he spoke, his eyes fell on a spoon. He rubbed the spoon against his shoe to make it look dirty. Then he called a guard over, showed him the dirty spoon, and asked if it could be replaced with a new one. The guard accepted Morris's request, and Morris and John went to get the spoon replaced. While John distracted the guard with small talk, Morris took the opportunity to quietly pocket not one, but 2 spoons. Then he went to Litmus and borrowed a coin from him. That night, Morris lit a small fire in his cell and melted the spoon to fuse it with the nail clipper. With his newly forged tool, he resumed digging into the wall, and this time, the tool worked perfectly. While Morris was busy digging that night, a guard came very close to his cell, and Charlie failed to notice him. But just in time, English showed up and distracted the guard. Seeing this, Morris quickly covered the hole and jumped back onto his bed. Though he avoided getting caught, he realized one thing: he couldn't fully trust Charlie. Over the next few days, after continuous digging, Morris noticed that even though the grill was old, he would still need a specific tool to remove it. Meanwhile, whenever he went out to the prison yard, he would fill his pockets with the dirt from the digging and discreetly drop it on the ground outside. While working in the prison workshop, Morris crafted a special tool that could cut through the grill. To avoid suspicion, he held a piece of iron in his hand. So, when the alarm went off at the machine, the guards confiscated the decoy piece of metal, but that had been Morris's plan all along. The real tool was hidden in his shoes. Back in his cell, Morris got to work, and after some effort, he cut through the grill and removed it. Meanwhile, Charlie, John, and Clarence did the same in their respective cells. Phase 1 of the escape plan was now complete. The group then decided to create fake heads so that when they escaped, the guards would be fooled into thinking they were still asleep. The team divided the work. John would steal some hair from the prison salon. Charlie would arrange for some paint. And Morris stole old newspapers from the prison library. They then mixed plaster from the dugout wall with the paper to form a skull-shaped mold. After painting and detailing it to look like a human face, they added hair, making it appear like Ariel head. Morris also painted a fake grill so that the gap in the wall wouldn't be noticeable. One night, Morris decided to go beyond the grill to explore what lay outside. He placed the fake head on his bed and climbed out through the vent, navigating through the pipeline until he emerged above. There he found a metal door, but it was quite high up and he couldn't reach it alone. Meanwhile, a guard on his nightly round passed by Morris's cell. Seeing the fake head on the bed, he assumed Morris was sleeping and moved on without suspicion. The next morning, Morris told his friends about the metal door. That night, John and Morris decided to return to inspect it. After the prison had fallen silent, they left their cells and made their way to the door. Morris climbed onto John's shoulders to inspect it and realized that with the right tool, they could cut through the gate. The next day, during their music class, Morris spotted a broken fan. He figured it could be used to build the tool they needed. Once class ended, he quietly placed the fan into an instrument case and walked out of the room unnoticed. Later, he dismantled the fan and used its motor to create a device that could cut through the metal gate. That night, Morris and John returned to the gate and began cutting it. The noise raised some suspicion, and a few guards did hear something, but they ignored it and moved on. After a lot of effort, they finally cut through the gate and rushed back to their cells. The following day, while all inmates were watching a movie, Morris, Charlie, John, and Clarence agreed. They would escape from the world's most dangerous prison on Tuesday night. On Tuesday morning, while having breakfast, Morris placed a flower on Unforgettable in memory of Doc. The warden, observing from a distance, grew suspicious. He approached Morris, reminded him of prison rules, and crushed the flower. Witnessing this, Litmus flew into a rage and attacked the warden. However, due to high blood pressure, he suffered a heart attack and died on the spot. That evening, the warden ordered a search of Morris's cell, sensing something was off. But during the inspection, the guards found nothing and didn't notice the fake grill either. After the inspection, the warden told a guard to move Morris to a different cell. The guard replied he would handle the paperwork first and then move him. Meanwhile, we see Wolf. He was released from solitary confinement after 6 months and was once again planning to attack Morris. But before he could make a move, English stopped him and saved Morris's life. Finally, the night of the escape arrived. Morris and his teammates agreed to meet near the gate. As night fell one by one, they left their cells and made their way to the gate. At the last moment, Charlie backed out. Fear took over. John, Morris, and Clarence hurried to the gate and, helping one another, climbed onto the prison roof. Charlie eventually gathered some courage and left his cell too. But once he reached the gate, he couldn't get through on his own. He had missed his one shot at freedom. Meanwhile, Morris and his 2 friends dodged the searchlights and made their way to the prison backyard. They crossed the large gate and finally escaped the most dangerous prison in the world. Upon reaching the ocean, they used the stolen raincoats to build a makeshift raft. After much effort, they finally built the raft, and at last, the 3 escaped the hell known as Alcatraz. The next morning, when the guards removed the blankets from their beds, they froze upon seeing the fakeheads. They couldn't believe that. Alarms blared throughout the prison and the manhunt began. The news spread across the country, and soon even the Air Force and Navy joined the search, but there was still no trace of John, Morris, or Clarence. On the other side, we see that the shreds of raincoat material and personal effects of the men are found floating in the bay. While searching on Angel Island, the humiliated warden insists that the men's belongings were important and they would have drowned before leaving them behind. A policeman notes the possibility that the men simply threw the items into the water to make it look like they had drowned. Later, the warden is summoned to Washington to face his superiors for failing to prevent the breakout. On a rock, the warden finds a chrysanthemum flower head. His aide points out that none grow on Angel Island means Morris and his 2 inmates successfully escaped the world's most secure prison, Alcatraz. A postscript states that the fugitives were never found, and that Alcatraz as a prison closed less than a year later after the jailbreak incident.